Lachlan Cartwright is here for our little PvA OT. We're going to go deep on 60 Minutes. But for those of you who do not know, Lachlan is the proprietor of Breaker, one of my favorite newsletters out there. There's a lot of media newsletters. I'm shocked by the number for a dying industry, but there are a lot out there, right? Why are there so many?
It's
Lachlan?
the world's greatest navel-gazing industry. You know, like we love reading about each other. So there is a plethora of these newsletters, and I'm lucky that Breaker has, taken a small piece of the action, and we're just humbly and organically building it.
Yeah, what I like about Breaker is it's feral. Like, you have a tabloid sensibility. You've worked at tabloids. You have it.
I grew up in tabloids across the pond.
You have it in your blood, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I grew up, working at the Sun in London, learning from some of these legends of Fleet Street who would take me down the pub with the coppers and the crims that they were sourcing and allow me to sort of, sit there as I sort of learned from osmosis.
I mean, beyond the work you have to do to get there, what I love about these feral types, Brian, is the great thing about a good tabloid journalist is like they understand what people are really interested in, and
that's a compliment, Lachlan. I think.
No, it's a great compliment.
The other big hit that I had, Troy, was I broke the yarn a few years ago about James Murdoch and his thoughts and his wife's thoughts about the family's coverage, or News Corp and Fox's coverage of the bushfires in Australia. And that story led to him leaving the board of News Corp. It led to this huge rift with his brother Lachlan and sort of him being in exile from the family. So the super injunction thing was really important. And, my Murdoch coverage has then continued on to then staking out Uncle Rip's 95th and being the only reporter outside the grill, standing there for 8-9 hours in the cold to get the great and the good coming in for that occasion.
They must love you. They must love you, that family.
Yeah.
I think they have very wide views. Every time they have a crack, they say, "You guys taught me everything I know," which isn't very much, but still, I did learn every trick of the tabloid trade
100%.
from you guys. So you can't. You got your own.
Leaves me wondering, Lachlan. Sorry to hijack this interview, but I have many questions. What did you learn from Pecker, from David Pecker? Did you learn anything from that guy?
I didn't learn much besides having a great footrest, which is the safe of secrets is sat in my office with these catch and kill contracts. And I used as a footrest. And as I detailed to the New York Times magazine, at one point when I was helping to get these stories out in the bloodstream as a source, I had to open this rickety old safe to get one of the contracts out, to get the names to a journo. And I couldn't get the bloody door of the safe closed. And I was shitting myself that Dylan Howard would come into my office and see the safe open and question me as what I was doing. So I turned the TV up loud in my office and I was just trying to just slam this bloody safe shut as I'm sweating.
That's so funny.
And
I mean, surely he taught you more than that.
I got it shot in time, but I learned absolutely nothing from David Pecker. I got to say that period of my career, as I detailed to the New York Times magazine, the only high point was doing those series of the super injunction stories that I just mentioned. But I think what I learned from Pecker was how not to be a crook.
Let me hijack back. Let's talk about the 60 Minutes drama because, Look, you're in the thick of it. Dylan Byers at Puck is in the thick of it. It's competitive out there. Like the rap is coming in. I know you've got a great feud with Sharon Waxman, Sharon Waxjob, as you call her. But this is like Oliver Darcy at Status is in this. The New York Times is in on it. Even the FT. Even the FT is deaning.
Reuters had a great hit. Ed Lee.
Ed Lee. Ed Lee's back.
Ed Lee's back. 3 bylines on a Reuters story, but they had a great hit about Bilton 2.0, a 24-year-old kid Bilton's hired and this woman who's shadowing him. No, this is, the cavalry is here. Like, make no mistake. This is Christmas in June. For media reporters, there is so much going on here. There are so many great characters from Bari Weiss, obviously, to Nick Bilton, to Scott Pelley.
So walk us through the characters.
All of this.
We believe in narrative here at PvA. So walk us through the characters, because then let's start with Bari Weiss. Bari Weiss, she's a great character. I just think she is a wonderful character, but break down that character for us and what your reporting has told us maybe about her that isn't obvious to others.
Yeah, I mean, look, you had her backstory of leaving the New York Times in a bowl of flames, writing this memo, and then starting her Substack, the Free Press, which really just kind of took off in the moment we were living in, because her sort of stance was this anti-woke material that she drummed up. I remember actually going for a meeting at the Free Press, one period where I was briefly freelancing, and them offering me $2 a word. And I said, well, what do you want me to write? And the editor there said, well, just come up with 5 media companies and find us anti-woke threads to pull on, like what had happened at CBS with Tony DeCoppel. I said, sorry, you want me to do what? And they said, yeah, just pick 5 media companies. We just want anti-woke porn, basically. And I said, I don't think this assignment's for me. And I had to turn them down, even though $2 a word.
$2 a word?
Very generous. No one else was offering me $2 a word. At that time, I was writing for CJR and the Anchor of Vanity Fair. No one else was offering me $2 a word.
I don't know the CJR contracts, but I don't think it's $2.
They were about 25.
What underneath of all that, Lachlan, makes her a compelling character?
But she built this business, and got to give her credit. She built the Free Press through, her Israeli stance. She's obviously very pro-Israeli, this anti-woke porn. And she got the attention of some very, influential billionaires. She was out living in LA, people like Andreessen Horowitz, Mark Andreessen, and she got a lot of investment, and she built the Free Press into, a 60-odd operation, and then, went out to flog it off to market. They bring in a bloke called Dennis Berman, who was a former Wall Street Journal bloke who was working at one of the bankers, I think it was Lazard. And in any event, they shop it around, and David Ellison picks it up for 150 mil. Now, why does David Ellison pick it up for 150 mil? Well, it's complicated because he, at that point, is trying to get a couple of deals through, one being the CBS, the Paramount deal, and then on to where we are now with Warner Brothers Discovery. And he obviously wants to win over Trump. He, makes it very clear that they're going to reorientate CBS. And what better way than bringing in the anti-woke crusader, Bari Weiss, and naming her editor-in-chief of CBS News.
What I find interesting about the Bari Weiss character is she's very charismatic. I don't know her. Everyone has told me she's very charismatic, particularly with Troy and his friends. With the boss class, you're outnumbered here, Troy. Sorry, you just have to deal with it.
Well, I mean,
but she's not popular. It seems like she is a lightning rod within the guild, and that is the journalist types. Like, I was struck that Scott Pelley was saying, we need editorial independence from the editor-in-chief.
Well, you've got to remember, she doesn't have any TV experience. So her going into the Tiffany Network, this sort of legacy news organization, capital J journalist, big J with a bold J, and of course that is going to send them all scurrying away. And immediately she starts bringing in people also without TV experience. Her deputy, Adam, formerly from the New York Times and the Free Press, Charles Farrell, who, left the Journal under a cloud over his extremely close working relationship with a colleague, Maria Boudet.
Extremely close working relationship. That's doing a lot of work. Go on.
I've got to be careful with
You're really going to sit on that she's not a TV person thing? I think that's so lame. That's so lame. History is filled with, enterprising characters that had put a dent in the world because they were not the X of a category, but they came in and they looked at it different. And if there was ever a time to reshape a category, it's now.
Yeah.
Because the format, the product is designed for a medium that doesn't fit anymore. So the entire vocabulary
let's talk about how she's being reshaped
on the archetype.
This is like Crossfire.
Scott Pelley. Let's do the Scott Pelley, the whining, obnoxiously entitled journalist profile.
He's an imperfect protagonist.
He's an imperfect show that's working. That was the one show that was working. Up 9% in the ratings. It is a cash cow. It's had its best season. That is the one thing that was working. And that's the one thing that she was told by George Cheeks, don't blow up. And she's gone on to blow it up. The morning show is number 3. the evening news #3, and that both
The morning show doesn't have a brand, brother. If you're going to take anything and bring it into the future, you want an intersection of entertainment and news, and that's exactly what 60 Minutes is, and it has a brand, so you can add a personality layer onto it, and a clip layer, and a podcast layer, and a community layer, and all of that, and bring that thing into the future. That's where you would focus if it was your business.
Don't back down, Lachlan.
That's where you would put your energy.
This narrative that 60 Minutes has lived in the past for decades is something that Nick Bilton said when he got in there. It's just not the case. They have a big presence on YouTube. They've been doing a lot of the things you just mentioned, but this was the one show that was working
on
for them.
YouTube, man.
I think what Troy is getting at, let me translate here, is the product that CBS has been producing is simply out of date. Like, yes, 10 million people still watch 60 Minutes. Average age is 65, et cetera. The people making it,
and they're dumped in by football. It's important to recognize that.
The fact that we were like waiting on tenterhooks for the decision of Leslie Stahl, 84-year-old Leslie Stahl. I mean, look, no offense to Leslie Stahl. She's had a wonderful career and everything like this. We should not be betting the future of a franchise on an 84-year-old person. Talk to me about Scott Pelley as a character, because I dug up this. I was just like going through, I was looking for the X discourse, and I came across one of my old Twitter like posts from 2007, right? This is pre-Obama.
You were even angrier.
Yeah. And it was all lowercase before it went out of vogue. And it just said Scott Pelley is insufferable. There was no context whatsoever. And I think that actually holds.
Did it get any likes, Brian, at the time?
No, it got nothing because nobody was using Twitter. It was like Field Notes is now. It was like a private little enterprise. But talk to me about this as a character, Scott.
Yeah, Scott Pelley has a rep, and that rep is for, as you mentioned, somewhat insufferable. He also has a rep for doing things like this. This isn't the first time that he's gone off. I mean, it's happened back when David Rhodes was running the network, and there were some pretty intense contract negotiations going on. He'd hired Ari Emanuel over at WME. They were trying to shake CBS down for more money, and David Rhodes called Pelley's bluff and punted him to 60 and brought in another anchor. So, Scott Pelley went into that meeting with Nick Bilton, I bet you, thinking I'm going to go down in a blaze of glory, even though he says differently. And, he has this reputation for being this sort of livewire character.
Which I like. I have to admit, I have sympathy for this.
That's what TV and media is made up of.
Yeah.
It's made up of characters, and we need more of them, not less.
I know, Troy, you have a different point of view.
You can't be insubordinate.
God.
Here comes the suit. Here comes the suit.
Come on.
I don't care if you're a member of the guild or star talent. Brian, you know this more than anyone. When you undermine the boss, you get shown the door. And that's how organizations work. And and you know what? It's a decision that they are perfectly entitled to make. It's their money. It's their show. It's their responsibility and accountability if it goes the wrong way. If they don't like the guy, fire him. It's not his show. He's hired talent. He makes $10 million a year. Womp womp.
Well, apparently they know that his spouse.
You can't call the new boss an asshole in a meeting.
He didn't call him an asshole. He did insult the bagels, though, which I thought was over the line.
That show is rich for having those kind of debates. And I think that, the firing of him,
dude,
that's somewhat of a...
Troy, have you ever worked... Come on, you know this. Have you worked in a kitchen? I mean, kitchens are different. The rule, like kitchens, locker rooms, and like newsrooms, they're different workplaces.
Correct. 100%. 100%.
The boss made a decision.
All right, let's talk about the new boss and Nick Bilton as a character. I knew Nick Bilton a little bit during the Web 2.0 days when he was helming. Do you remember the Bits blog on the New York Times?
Yes.
Yeah, I knew him like that, and then he sort of disappeared from my like worldview, and then he went to Hollywood, and he's been
he went to Vanity Fair in between that period.
Yeah, but that was like a sinecure. I mean, come on.
I've seen these type of journos before, and Nick Bilton fills a certain mold, and those are people that are always looking to monetize a story. They're not really interested in the actual journalism, but they're thinking this could be a book, this could be a screenplay, this could be a movie. Hence why Nick Bilton had, as I highlighted, 8 agents. He had eight agents on the cards, but he had, effectively left journalism to pursue screenwriting. He was working on a project with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He meets Bari in one of these LA dinner parties with Nellie Bowles and gets on her radar, during that period. And then, as she's looking for a new P for 60 Minutes, Nick Bilton appears on the scene and is now collecting, a cool just over $2 million for this gig. But, again, another person without any TV experience, another person who's very much over there.
Wait. Hold on, man.
I don't think Nick Bilton appreciated what was going to kick off when he took
Jesus Christ. So an enterprising journalist and a great storyteller, a person with a great sense of culture, goes out and figures out how to secure the bag. And you two angry journalists.
No, don't loot me. No.
You
Troy,
think he's a fucking traitor.
Troy, that is offensive, as you know. And as Lachlan celebrates, I believe in monetization. Okay, so that's number one.
Yeah, aren't you meant to be hosting a lounge right now, Brian, or doing a new survey for a meter or something? Is that what should be happening right now?
I call it Vendorcella. Yeah, Vendorcella's happening. No, Nick, look, he got the extra pay. He's making what, $1 million a year more?
I think it's 2.3 million.
But it's $1 million more because he's got to take combat pay. This is not forever. This is a job where you negotiate the exit package before you take the job.
100%. 100%. And right now,
it's called a contract.
And right now he has an enviable task where he has to now go out and try and recruit people for this show. My understanding, there's a number of talent meetings that are in the books for next week. They're down, for correspondence. He needs.
You take the job. You take it, wouldn't you, Lachlan?
I think it's a great idea. It's a great idea.
You would take a segment. We'd give you a segment.
I did a year of regional TV 20 years ago. I can't run a show. No, I wouldn't take the 60 minutes.
No, you could be this sort of angry, modern Andy Rooney.
Perfect. No, that's my job.
Work. Well, that's Brian's job.
Apparently with Scott Galloway, and now they're in some pissing contest with Scott Galloway in the New York Post. What are you doing? Why are you fighting, Scott Galloway? The building's on fire. You need to fix this fucking five-alarm fire. Why are you getting into a pissing contest with Scott Galloway? It's mad.
So Troy, what characters do you bring in then to 60 Minutes? If you're going to modernize it, just give me a couple, my ideas, someone like Kyla Scanlon, bring in a new crop of correspondent that isn't necessarily from the TV world, but should be YouTube native. And they can maintain their independence. They've got heat. They have earned energy, as we've talked about on this podcast. Yeah. But give me the kinds of things that you think that they should do to modernize this.
I like watching 60 Minutes on occasion because it's like eating baby food, right? You don't have to chew the apple. And it is, Scott Pelley will sit there and ask them, we can't make news like this anymore for a young generation because it's too stupid. And that doesn't mean that someone an enterprising producer behind the scenes hasn't done a lot of digging and they found, an interesting story, but it's like the way it's delivered is designed for someone that grew up on, baby news, network television, CNN, which for a new generation is completely unwatchable. So you have to be more fiery. You have to, ask tougher questions. You have to be more conceptual. You have to have a fan base that extends beyond the show. And I think you have to, above all else, have a really good eye for, the characters in the story. But the way that these questions are asked on 60 Minutes and the stories are presented is completely outdated. So you need to find modern talent. And the good news is, just like the Renaissance we're seeing in filmmaking, is there's so many good people that are rising up through the podcast system.
Yeah, and they're not Anderson Cooper. They're a Kyla Scanlon.
Mark has to do a science segment.
Well, I don't know about that.
Why not?
I mean, I'm not a Dwarkish fan. What about Pablo Torre? I guess they kept that Worthon guy, but get Pablo Torre in there. I like the way he tells
seems
stories.
A little busy right now. He's got a couple of commitments already. No, but here's the deal. That audience that 60 has is still a very locked in audience. They're going to alienate that audience. I bet you now a steak dinner that when that show comes back in September, there's already brand damage done. It's already going to dent that audience. And Troy, where is this new audience that you're talking about? They're out on YouTube. They're not watching 60 Minutes.
I mean, I think you have to execute like an omni-channel strategy for sure. But you have like the world's greatest kind of news magazine brand. There's no reason that with the right, execution in talent, storytelling, and distribution, you can't build an enormous business, much bigger than the business today. And yeah, you can keep harvesting the TV segment, make the product work for that, older consumer. That's fine. But I think that you can be a lot more sort of intellectually ambitious than you are today.
Okay. Let's put a pin in that now, because Lachlan, I want you to stay for good product. Okay. So I want to give it to you, Troy, but I have a good product. I'm just taking over good product a little bit, but it's because Lachlan is here, because one of the you do many things well, Lachlan, but I think one of the things you do exceptionally well is party reporting, particularly when you zero in on the canapes, because that is the important.
The details matter. It doesn't matter if it's the food or it's little details. It shows the punters. It shows the readers.
Yeah.
On the reporting, you've done the reporting, and that's important.
So I want
to go through a list of what the all-time greats are.
Let me just go. I thought of you last night because I went to an
It's in the blanket at the end.
I went to an airmail party. It was not.
I need to speak to my mate John Kelly over at South Tribeca, over at Air Puck. I broke the Air Puck story, and they don't invite me to their shindig. How was it?
They're scared of you, man. They're scared of you.
Oh, give me a break. I'm not that scary. I'm a bloke with a fucking fedora.
So John told me, because I did my reporting, that this is a Puck staple. They like to serve pigs in a blanket, but it's Puck. It's airmail. So they're elevated pigs in a blanket. They've got this. They've got these black sesame seeds on top of this flaky puff pastry that encases a slightly spicy wiener. No spicy mustard, which to me is not, that's not the classic pig in a blanket. I know every culture has a version of a pig in the blanket.
We have mini sausage rolls in Oz.
Okay, you have mini sausage rolls, because the pig in the blanket is, and I wrote about this a little bit today, it is the quintessential totem of American abundance post-World War II, because people moved into the suburbs, they got a big house with a big lawn, and they invited people over to show off their big house with their big lawn. And this was a effortless, classy, easy way to serve cocktail party food to your neighbors. And
we served them at the Breaker 1 year bash. We served them there.
I say, there you go.
Without the poppy seed, and it wasn't elevated. It was just fucking pigs in the blanket.
Yeah, well, you have cigarettes.
Go ahead, I have to chime in now. Well, because I'm curious about the sort of ontology of cocktail snacks. I think that that's a really good choice, because I really like them. I think the mustard's really an important detail if you want to talk details. But like, if I was to go to my all-time greats, there's a bunch that you'll recognize, and I'm not going to put arancini on there but like a lamb lollipop, that's a nice item, and that's a premium item.
That's elevated.
The very common tuna tartare on a chip with a little bit of a chive on top. No, you can't go wrong with that, right? I do think that the mini samosas, the little cocktail samosas, is the sort of Indian equivalent of pigs in a blanket. And I like
good form factor. It's a great form factor.
And then I think one of the all-time greats is bacon wrapped dates. Those are amazing. I really like that as an item. I would stop at like chicken liver mousse on toast. I think not enough people like that kind of stuff. And sometimes if you have someone who's got a big budget, mini lobster rolls are nice.
I was going to say mini lobster rolls.
Well, that's
mini
like
meat
sliders
pies for me. Mini meat pies. I love mini meat pies.
Yeah. That's a nice item. But like endive boats with blue cheese and walnuts, no. I don't think that's that good.
It's not hard enough. And also, I think people used to do this more like shrimp cocktail, because you're going to drip it on yourself. You're going to get your.
Well, you're also you have a very high probability of getting food poisoning.
Oh yeah, we did. So Lachlan,
Same with oysters.
we poisoned a bunch of people 2 years ago at a holiday, PvA holiday party.
Nice party. Yeah, the oysters were off. You can blame Joe
I
Marchese
just
for
went
that
to a
one.
party that you made me wait outside for half an hour. That's the only party I've come to a few places.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and we didn't have food. We did have food, but it was like like meats and cheeses abandoned in a corner. It wasn't executed great. I have to admit.
Really bad.
What was the ML bash last night? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, it was for the launch of Airmail's new like style section.
That's what we need. We need another style section.
Yeah, no, and it was, what is it called? I should know this.
Was it Lauren's party?
No, dress code, which is, they lured over Ricky DeSole to
Ricky DeSole, not to be confused with Rufus DeSole.
to launch. It was well done, though. I will say I wasn't actually invited. I tagged along. My wife got the invite. So
They do spend money. I went to a couple of their White House correspondence parties, and they took over the Ned, and they had a huge seafood platter. Like, it's a huge thing of oysters and shrimp, and they had the whole takeover of the Ned, which must have cost an absolute monster, like probably 7 figures. So
I tried to do some reporting on that. Liz Goff would not tell me how much
those
it cost.
roofing blokes, they just love spunking money when they're not spending on their roofs. They're spending on little big parties.
75 people. I would say probably they paid 15, maybe 20.
Where was it?
It
South
was
Tribeca?
No, it was in Nolita. Temple Bar.
Oh, I like Temple Bar.
Yeah, it was a fine place. Should we leave it there?
I'll just round out the segment because you hijacked it. You know, last week I had
You told me you wanted me more involved. So this is what it looks like.
Yeah, that's me telling you something I didn't want to really tell you. The Tabasco, someone sent me some Stuzzi Italian hot sauce. I don't know who it was.
No, that stuff. No,
It's not
You
bad,
got that hot
actually.
sauce. I've got a little bottle here on my desk.
Yeah, I love it. I love Tabasco the
Mini
most.
bottle of hot sauce.
You guys, I mean, after last night's incredible basketball game, it's impossible to not have live sports as a good product, especially playoff NBA. I mean, oh my God, this is one for the ages. I mean, incredible. I could hear people down the block screaming. It was like, with all the bad shit in the world, finally people have one positive thing in New York City to hold on to.
The city
and
is
they're letting
electric.
it rip.
New York
It's
City is electric
unbelievable.
right now. Between
It's
this
so
and
great.
the World Cup, the city is absolutely litty. And Saturday night is going to go off.
It is. And it's just one of those moments, Lachlan, where you really appreciate live sports. It's so terrific. It's great. I love it so much. And I also love that kids are going to the cinemas and watching real movies.
Yeah, I triggered New Yorkers. I decided to do a little experiment on
You were
X.
trolling yesterday, right?
I was. I decided to do a little experiment on
troll
X.
under the bridge.
And I just put that like New York is a terrible sports town because there's too much money, too many transplants, and there's too much going on. And it worked. It had like 500,000 like views. I wanted to see if like this like real antagonism.
Well, it's a kind of a bad take. Like, what are you doing?
No, I think it's defensible. It's defensible take.
First of all, the timing's bad. And second of all,
No, the
Knicks
timing's
are
great.
The Knicks are the bad news bears, man, playing a team that had all the draft picks and all the money. So, like, one of the reasons that people are so into this is because there's not a top 20 star on the team. All they got is a sweaty 6'2" guy that's fighting for every basket he gets.
Yeah,
this is why people love the Knicks right now.
They got Nova guys. I'll give you that. Like, okay. Here's my thing on just very quickly on why New York is a bad sports town. I know this will trigger a lot of people. In America, American football is the number 1, 2, 3 sport. Okay. You cannot be a great sports town without having maniacal, fanatical attachment to your football team. And those towns are post-industrial wastelands for the most part. That's what you want in a great sports town. You want to be Pittsburgh, you want to be Cleveland, you want to be Buffalo, yes. And yes, I admit, you want to be Philadelphia. You have to have that because there's just too much going on in New York. New York is the center of everything. It's fine, but it's not going to be a great sports town. The Knicks okay, admittedly, of the New York sports teams, I think the Knicks have the most organic appeal. But then you look at this stadium, $4,000 for a ticket, the Kardashians and all this celebrity stuff. This is just another thing for rich people.
It's like your take that downtown isn't cool anymore. I'm sorry, Troy, get into him.
Downtown's not cool, other than Fi-Dye. Fi-Dye's cool.
Downtown's still very much cool, mate.
All right.
It's cool.
Lachlan, this was a lot of fun.
Cheers.
I'm really glad you came on. You're amazing. Thank you.
Thanks,
All right. Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
That's it for this episode of People vs. Algorithms, where each week we uncover patterns shaping media, culture, and technology. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Vanya Arsenov. She always makes us a little clearer and more understandable, and we appreciate her very, very much. If you're enjoying these conversations, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It helps us get the word out and keeps our community growing. Remember, you can find People vs. Algorithms on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and now on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.